Hi everybody, welcome to another episode of the Build Smart Blueprint. So Arthur and I are here together. Today we're going to talk a little bit about software. It's a question that comes up a lot when we talk to clients, when we talk to each other about what the best types of software for a construction company to use are, what the pros and cons, what to consider when you're kind of not using anything, or potentially if you're thinking of moving from one platform to another. Something that you'll often find comes up is this term API. So I thought we'd start our conversation there, Arthur, is like explaining what an API is, how that links to the kind of software, because I think that is a bit of a precursor to other considerations, right?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's like a really important consideration, along with the interface, along with just like how nice it is to use for people. But basically, an API is what allows one piece of software to talk to another. So, for example, you can have your Google Sheets connected to a completely other platform that manages your tasks, for example, or the same way that a lot of people have their accounting software and it automatically gets information from different places. You can connect your accounting software to your bank, but then also you can connect it to other applications on your laptop. Connecting it to your bank is slightly different because it's not like you have the bank on your computer. But if you wanted to connect it, for example, when an invoice gets paid, you want a certain action to be triggered. I don't know, a reminder to send an email to a client, for example. That's happening generally through an API, allowing me to build something and then someone else to build something completely different. But then by having an open API, so you have closed APIs and you have open APIs, by me building my platform, the Arthur invoice machine, by having it with an open API, I'm basically saying I'm allowing my platform to talk to others. That's basically
so when
what it
you
is.
say, because just to take one step back and I guess define when you say connecting, is this because we've all been there, especially when computers first started, kind of softwares and stuff first started to come out, is like where you've got multiple tabs open and you're copying and pasting information essentially from one to another because they don't talk to each other. So is that what you mean by like this idea of connecting?
Yeah, I mean, it's sending information from one platform to another without the other platform necessarily seeing stuff it doesn't need to see. For example, in that invoice example, if you're holding something on Xero or QuickBooks, for example, you don't want the other application to also be able to see all your banking details and all your sales details and everything. You just want it to get the information you want to send to it. So that's what the API does.
So when you mention about, because you said you think it's a really important thing, like knowing or just considering APIs when looking at software, why do you think that's the important, and what are the kind of the consequences, I guess, or what's the output? What's the thing that me as the builder is going to see if I choose, option A or option B, for example?
Because what happens is we all get used to using certain platforms, right? And this can definitely happen for construction businesses, I guess, when they start to probably, I'd say, a couple of million revenue, where they're using the same system and then it's quite entrenched in their business. Once you're running multiple projects, some are starting and some are ending and it's all happening. A few years down the line, you've got so much information and so many processes built up in that system. If that system has a closed API, i.e. you can't connect it to other things, the only real option for you to go beyond that system is to just get rid of it and start with the new one. So, what you might find is your business grows, and for example, you might not have accounting software. You might not actually need it. You might just use Excel spreadsheets at first. But then later on, you want your accounting software to connect with some aspect of your, task manager, project management system. And if that doesn't have an open API or a way to connect, well, what are you going to do? Well, then you have to change. You either have to manually go and put all the things into your accounting software, which is what a lot of people do, or you have to completely get rid of the closed system and move to an open one.
It might be a silly question, because why would a software company have a closed API? Like, why would they do that?
Well, because what a lot of companies do, and we're now getting into like the business practices of some of these companies and things. Well, first of all, let's be fair to them that older companies didn't really. This wasn't a thing so much before. Having all these different platforms talk to each other. It was just normal that you had a bunch of people in the office, and the accounting staff used this, the project management staff used this, and for them to talk to them, they emailed them or they phoned them or whatever, right? But the other thing is, it's because it kind of keeps you trapped in their ecosystem. Okay, so maybe you're a small company, you start with them, you grow with them. You've built up so much data and processes, and all your team work on that platform. It's a real pain to then move over to something is more efficient. It's a better solution, but you're basically weighing up. I mean, this is like perhaps slightly, this is a kind of it is related. I know I'm not going to name the bank. It's a global bank. I know departments that are working on Windows 98 because it just doesn't make sense. Like the amount of investment that they would have to put in to move everyone off Windows 98, even though they know, well, if we go onto this new system, it can connect with this and we don't have to be sending these emails to that department. And it's just, that's what happens, which is a good thing for small businesses. Actually, small businesses are more agile and they can make those switches.
So just to make sure I got that, are you sort of saying that it makes them, as a contractor, I guess, if you're on a platform with a closed API, it makes you more wanting to explore, trying to stay within that platform and not change? Is that what you mean? Because the cost of changing is bigger than the cost of
and for the platform, once they've got you on, they don't really need to develop as much because you're less inclined to move, and so then you increasingly make your processes fit that platform instead of going, oh well, we don't do that like that. So what we're going to do is we're going to do our project management like this, but we're going to run our variations through this other platform, but then just have them talk to each other. You can't do that. So it's like you're either all in or you're not. And right. That's kind of the situation that they create.
I'm sure many, because I know when I made my first few software choices, I had no idea. Right? I was just looking at job needs to be done. This software does that job. Costs a reasonable amount per month. Yeah, sounds good. I'm sure there's others that are listening to this that are exactly the same. How do you work out the sort of status of a certain software, like in terms of its, I don't know, API-ness, if that's a term, like how open it is, I guess. How do you do that?
Well,
what do you do?
In terms of that just that element, Now it's much easier because essentially, if it has an open API, if it connects to something like Make, which used to be Integromat or something, and or Zapier, if it connects to one of those two, you're good, right? Because those two act as intermediary. They work in between platforms. So if, for example, Zero connects directly to Excel, I'm just making this up, right? They connect directly. If they don't, but they both connect to Make, which is doable, is all I know that is doable. You can do that. So that there is always this like in between platform that you can use to make those things connect.
I'm talking actually more about like less deeper level than what you answered. Like, how do I know if my software has an open API? Is it like on the website? Do you have to ask like a specialist or?
I would say always ask, because a lot of for the construction guys, a lot of these platforms they get you on a sales call, a demo, etc. Ask them, and I mean, as far as I know, as long as I've known Buildertrend, an open API has been in their plans, right? It's never materialized. So don't take them for their word if they say that, oh no, it's something we're going to be doing, because anyone can say that. They can always say, oh, it's on our roadmap, and
Can I ask then? Because I think I'm getting a little bit confused, and I'm sure others listening to this are as well. When you go to a platform like the one you just mentioned there, so on Buildertrend you can click and it will have connects with Zero, connects with Slack, or it might have some, certain banks, Bank of America or whoever that they connect with.
Yep.
What's the difference between that and what you're saying? Is there a difference, or is that the same thing?
Yeah, there is. So for example, right? Okay, let's go back to the example of I've built my invoice machine, and you've built your task manager machine. Well, we can have a deal, right? I can have an exclusivity deal where it's like, okay, my invoice machine only connects with you. That's what Buildertrend has. Okay. That's what they have deals with different platforms where it's there's a list you can connect, and some platforms have a long list, right? Some platforms, their native integrations, we call them, are massive and probably will serve you well. But if you want to go beyond that, you need an open API.
I see.
They need to have chosen, okay, we don't mind if any platform connects with us, where you can send the information you want to whatever platform you want from here.
Right. So now I think I understand. So when you've got a software, you've got three types essentially, you're saying. So you've got your closed API, kind of completely shut off to anything other than said software. Then you've got like the mid-level, which is native integrations. So they've got specific agreements with specific software providers that provide services that they don't, that you can connect. And then you've got the kind of free for all open API where they're just opening the back of all your information to connect up.
Most of the ones that are open also have their own native ones, right? Because they'll just work more seamlessly with those. For example, maybe they'll work really well with G Suite. Like if you have Google Workspace, it'll be like, there's a native integration there. So any business that is on Google Workspace, it just works like seamlessly. And you don't need to then use an outside. That's the other thing, because with Make comes costs. They're very minimal costs. Could you just
explain that? Because I think you it's worth just explaining a little to those like me that don't fully understand, like especially Zapier. I hear it all the time, but it's like, what is what is Make and Zapier? What role do they fill? And how does that link back to, like, let's say a software with an open API and it has a native integration as well, like connecting, Smart Suite with Google, for example.
If we go back to the example of, I have the invoice machine, you have built a task manager machine, right? We have a native integration. That means there is a bridge that we both built between ours. The bridge is there all the time, solid. Zapier and Make, they go around building the bridges between this and other platforms. So, for example, I'm a platform that has an open API, but we struck a deal with JP Task Management where we've built a bridge. I have an open API. That means anyone else can come and build a bridge to their platform if they want, but that's kind of on you to do it, right? And for people that don't know how to, because you can actually, code an API and all these sorts of things, it's not a common thing. Like, you're not going to do that really. You would use a third-party platform. You use this kind of intermediary, which is Make, Zapier. And Make and Zapier have already got the connections with lots of different platforms. So, for example, if you go on to Make, it will have a long list of all the different platforms that it allows to connect with different platforms, which otherwise wouldn't connect. So that's what they do.
Make and Zapier are kind of like a main contractor being in between a client and a subcontractor. In some senses, it's like the client could go direct to the subcontractor if they wanted to. You could code it, but actually making it a bit easier for that message to get from one to the other.
Yeah, so imagine, you've got your client, and the client has their electricians that they always work with. That would be your native integration, right? We always use these electricians. We phone up the electricians, and they come and do what they need to do. Like, whatever job we have, they're the ones that do that. But then there are other subcontractors that they don't have connections with, they don't have direct ties with. That's when the main contractor comes in. They Make Zapier, and they go, okay, we'll sort that out. We're going to connect you with this, and this, and that's how that would work.
And that makes even more sense now. So, like, the main contractor coordinating two trades that don't talk to each other, but can talk to each other. That's interesting.
Yeah, because technically it's probably, a lot of these things is like, people, but it's not easy. You can code an API and all that sort of stuff and create one, but yeah, it's just way quicker. And
is there much difference between the two? Because you talk about Make or Zapier, are they basically the same? Just one's, just
they're very similar. From a user point of view, I think Zapier is more simple for people that don't know, they're just like not very computer literate, or they're just, super simple. Very, very simple way to build out workflows. Like, okay, just, that program connected with that one. Makes also, I find once you learn it, it isn't difficult. There's definitely more of a learning curve, but Make is cheaper. So each time you run a connection, so each time the invoice manager is sending information to the task manager, you're paying like a tiny bit for each automation.
Right.
Make is cheaper, and you can build out, I'd say, more complex connections with Make. So, for example, you want to connect 5 different programs together, and when this happens, it then sends information to this one, and when this happens, those kind of things. I think Make is better for that. So that's definitely a consideration as well.
So we just need to make sure when you are looking at like thinking of connecting two things together, to consider that there is actually a cost of putting something like Make together if they don't have a native integration between them. You also have to additionally factor in that cost, right? That's what you're saying.
Yeah, and I mean, I haven't looked at the pricing very recently, but it's very, very cheap for the lowest tier of Make. So, you know, we're talking like $5 a month maybe, and for a lot of small businesses, you're not going to go over the number of automations that allows for. Like it'd be very rare for smallest businesses.
This is kind of like again, probably a silly question or obvious question, but if you want to connect two softwares together to make them talk to each other, and you know they don't have a native integration, both of them have to have an open API, right, for it to connect?
Yeah, they both have to be available to receive and send the information. Yeah.
Fair enough. Look, I think it was last week where I was sitting on a meeting where I can't remember who or the exact context of it, but it was one client wanting to automate something with Make, and you sort of stopped them there and said, look, let's just do it manually first, because this was the first time the process. Can you just like expand a little? I didn't ask you at the time why you said that, but is that because the software doesn't work, or is there what's the logic behind encouraging clients to sort of not jump to automating straight away, essentially?
Nowadays, you know, there's a lot of talk on automations. Everything can be automated with AI and things like that. And that's all possible, right? But there's no point automating an inefficient system. And yes, you can map out the system as efficiently as it can be, which is what we do. But you really need the humans to be using the system for a certain amount of time before you start introducing the automation side of it, I find. Okay, because what happens is you might even find even more efficiencies, and you can cut out a step and then automate from A to C instead of even having B. We find that also the owner thinks that this is what they want and thinks that this is the system, and I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to send this email to the client, then after I receive that, but once they actually start doing it, they realize, no, that's not what I do. It's slightly different. So that's why I always say, wait until you're actually using it manually, and then you'll know, okay, this is now a repetitive task that doesn't require me to think about anything. It's just, you know, like once this is done, tick this, and then that immediately gets sent or whatever it is. So, yeah. And
then sometimes actually I think, especially if it's, if contractors looking to take on a new software and wants to integrate it, the cost of that new software and, all the automations and all the kind of, especially if you're hiring in somebody to do it, can sometimes be more expensive than just carrying on doing the manual process a lot of the time as well.
It can,
right?
Yeah. It can be. However, what I've found is I find a really strange situation, and I think it's probably our industry is one where it tends to happen a lot, is there's a lot of resistance to pay for software. Okay. And it's like, maybe they're used to paying 20, 30 quid a month for a software. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, this is like a few hundred quid a month. And they're very resistant. But then a few months later, they just hire someone. And I think you do realize that software could have done half of those things that, but because for them, it's easier to just say to someone, oh, do this and then do that and then do that. And they don't realize the actual cost of hiring someone, and the fact that, they go on holiday, they get sick and all those sorts of things. I found it more that way, that they end up sort of, going against the software, but then a few months later just going, oh, you know what, I really need someone in the office. And then they're paying for a full-time person in the office, which they don't need.
Yeah. I've seen that before. So I know at the start of this episode, you kind of explored that. And actually, I said talking about software, and you said, talking about usability and how software looks. I actually really think that we should wrap this one up here, just focusing on the APIs. I learned a lot there. I think we threw out a lot of technical terms and knowledge. So I think let's wrap it up, right? Let's wrap it up. On this topic
let's
of
wrap
APIs.
it up, and we'll pick it up. We'll pick up another topic that people say that they want.
Yeah, cool. See ya.